Welcome to the Soul Script podcast. Here we explore how to unlock the power of our story. Our journey here on earth can be one of deep passion, intentional creation, and personal transformation. The only thing holding us back is our stories. Come and join me as we rewrite and reignite. I was talking to a friend the other day who is going through something immensely difficult, and it involves her husband and some actions that her husband has taken that has affected her and her family, basically their entire marriage. So she's really trying to support her family, her kids, and she's trying to support her husband. Her kids and her husband are in therapy, and she's trying to give them every resource possible for them to be able to thrive. Well, I asked her, how are you supporting yourself? And she told me that she has a really good family support system, which is amazing. And she has focused on adding some joyous things in her life, activities that bring her joy. And then she told me that she had previously been going to therapy and that was good, but that she had to stop therapy because it got too hard. It was too much of a burden for her to go to therapy and kind of rehash and relive those experiences and pull everything to the surface. So she's taking a break from therapy in order to just recover from that. And this got me thinking about therapy and the process of therapy and what we really need to do to support ourselves as we're going through therapy. Therapy is an incredible tool that I would recommend anybody and everybody use if it's a resource that they are able to obtain. Therapy, though, is something that is really good at pulling things to the surface, and we need this. We need an awareness. I've talked about this before. We have to be aware in order to do anything. But when we just pull everything to the surface and we don't necessarily do anything about it after it's been pulled to the surface, that's when we get drained. That's when it's too much of a burden to keep going. Now, I think a really great therapist walks you through the whole thing and gives you tools to be able to move that stuff that they have helped you pull up. But occasionally we have a therapist that is extremely good at pulling stuff up, but hasn't been able to teach you the tools that you need in order to bear that burden of pulling those things up as you are working through all of these traumas that you have previously experienced and are now reliving. So today in this podcast episode, that is what we are talking about. We're talking about kind of a process that we can use to be able to support ourselves as we're going through therapy. Now, here on the Soul Script podcast, I love to use stories to be able to illustrate a point or a principle that I think is beneficial for us in our lives. And we are telling the story of the smoothie. It's the smoothie that was kind of that changing point for me and that momentum that I needed in order to heal from mold toxicity. Over 5 years ago, I started having seizures that would occur on a monthly basis, and then they started to get more and more frequent, and there were so many issues that came from these seizures, like memory loss, extreme fatigue, ADHD, the list goes on, and I have a whole podcast episode talking about my entire journey through healing and figuring out what these seizures are or what they were. But part of that process was healing from mold toxicity. I grew up in a house that had black mold. Now, most bodies are able to get rid of black mold or other toxins given enough time being away from those toxins. So removing yourself from the black mold, you will probably be able to recover from that in a relatively short amount of time. Well, my body, hello body, thank you body, has a really difficult time removing those toxins, processing, pulling them out of the body and getting rid of them. So I have had a buildup of mold in my body, plus who knows how many other types of biotoxins and heavy metals for a really long time. My doctor was the genius one who figured this out and suspected that my seizures could be directly caused by this buildup of mold. So we got to work on an action plan in order to help me remove this mold from my body. She recommended a biotoxin binder that would go in and bind itself to the mold and pull it up and out of all of the places that it's been hiding. So it hides in dark places, it can hide in your brain. It's so crazy that mold can hide in your brain for years. It can go in your sinuses, it can hide all over your body. And this biotoxin binder goes in, binds itself to the mold so it can be brought up to the surface and hopefully excreted through your detox pathways. Well, I started this biotoxin binder. I took 2 capsules a day for 2 weeks, and my body about broke down after those 2 weeks. I got sick, like ill, fatigued. My seizures had an uptick to the point where I could hardly function. So I went back to my doctor and I said, hey, this isn't working. This is what's happening. And she kind of apologized because she realized that we probably started too fast too soon. She recommended that I take the capsules, break them in half, and lick my finger and dip my finger into the powder that came out of the capsules and lick it back off in my mouth. And that this was the dosage that we needed to start with and then slowly titrate up to a full dose. So we went back to just a very small dose and we started working our way up. And eventually I was up to 1 capsule a day. And I could tell that stuff was happening to my body. I am very in tune with what is going on in my body, and I'm not sure if I could tell you exactly what it was that I could feel, but I could feel that things were happening and shifting inside my body. I could feel the process of those biotoxins being pulled to the surface, but I could tell that my body still needed support and that it wasn't quite flowing. That was the feeling I got, is that my body wasn't flowing. So I talked to my friend who actually suggested a smoothie to me. And this smoothie was created by the medical medium, and it's called the Heavy Metal Detox Smoothie. And it's specifically curated to go into the body, bind itself to toxins, and then help excrete those toxins. Well, with my biotoxin binder, I was going in, I was pulling them out, but I wasn't necessarily supporting the detox pathways in order to get them out of my body. So I started taking this smoothie on a regular basis, daily. I was taking it or drinking it religiously. And after 2 weeks of taking this heavy metal detox smoothie, man, things were flowing, but I could tell everything was starting to move in my body. And I started really supporting my detox pathways by sitting in a sauna and sweating and taking daily Epsom salt baths and drinking lots of good water. And I started to stink so bad. My armpits smelled awful and my breath smelled bad and my poop reeked. But it was this amazing sign to me that it was working. And my poor husband had to deal with this. And I just kept telling him, I'm like, hang in there. This is a really good indicator that things are working, and it's not always going to be like this. So just another 2 weeks later, after starting to, well, I guess it's 4 weeks after starting to take this smoothie, I stopped smelling. I was not fatigued. I felt vibrant and full of life. And I could tell that really that smoothie helped to purge my body from those toxins that I was pulling up and out of the crevices of who knows where in my body. After that, I really started to focus on putting good, nutritious food in my body, nutrients that were going to support and maintain this detox that I had. Because if I'm detoxing one time, that's fine, but we already know that my body has a difficult time detoxing. So it takes this maintenance and it takes this awareness of the things that I'm putting in my body and not just getting rid of to be able to maintain a healthy state. So I'm sure you can tell where I'm going with this. And I'd like to compare this experience with therapy and how we can really support ourselves while going through therapy. Therapy is that biotoxin binder. Therapy goes in and it pulls stuff to the surface. We become aware of it. But when sometimes we do it a lot, maybe too much too soon, and we get ill from it. And honestly, this could be physically ill, but it's kind of that emotional illness. You're incredibly fatigued, emotionally fatigued, and you just stop working. Your body says and your mind says, I don't want to keep doing this anymore. This is too hard and this is too much weight, and I'm not being supported to be able to get rid of this stuff. And I think that's really the moment where we decide, I can't work through this anymore. I can't go to therapy anymore, is because we're pulling the stuff to the surface, but we're not supporting ourselves in getting rid of stuff. So if therapy is that biotoxin binder, what are the things that we can start taking on a regular basis that is going to help us to purge ourselves from all of those heavy emotions and memories and traumas that are coming up to the surface? One of those big things that I will always talk about is body movement and really just taking care of our body. Our body is directly correlated to our internal world and vice versa. And when we work on one, then we work on the other. So physical movement helps move that emotion out of our body. And sometimes you can do this in a very strategic way. Like I've practiced running or like kickboxing or even lifting weights, and I focus on a specific memory or a specific thought or idea or just something that's really stuck inside of me. And with each movement, each step, each contraction, I'm focusing on releasing those pent up things within ourselves at the same time when I'm making those body movements. So when we move our body physically, we also move it energetically. Another great way that I love to purge myself is through journaling. Now, journaling can be really intense, similar to the therapy. And so what I like to do is start with scribbling. And sometimes I'll ask people, well, have you ever just scribbled? And they're like, what is scribbling? And scribbling is exactly what it sounds like. You just put your pen to paper and you just move it. And sometimes it's like, you're just like making holes in your paper. And sometimes it's loop-de-loops. Whatever it is, you're not putting any really real thought into it. You're just moving the pen on the paper and you don't even have to know what's coming out. You just set the intention that we're going to let those emotions and those thoughts and those traumas and whatever it might be come out through the pen and be left on that paper. So if you feel like you can't manage journaling because that is similar to getting stuff up like therapy, then maybe do some scribbling. But journaling can also be a great way because you're talking about it and leaving it on a piece of paper. Another suggestion could be screaming. And you know, in the movies, how somebody just goes into their bedroom and they shove a pillow in their face and they scream into the pillow? Well, this could be a really fantastic way for you to release. Basically, we're looking for anything that releases emotion or anything that releases pent up energy, whatever you're working through in your therapy. We want to get it out of our being. One way that I went and did this with some friends as we were working through some yucky things that we were actually going through together is we went to a smash house, or what do you call it? Like a smash room, maybe? We bought this box full of bottles, and they had other stuff that you could smash, like electronics, but the most satisfying one was a bottle because it just breaks, it shatters, and the sound of it and it totally exploding and going into teeny tiny little pieces is so satisfying. So we had this bat in our hand. We placed the bottle, the glass bottle, on a barrel, and we just smashed those things to death. And it was so releasing. And I remember walking out of there actually incredibly surprised at how good I felt. So that's like a safe way to be able to physically release some of that pent up emotion. Another great tool is envisioning. Where the mind goes, the energy flows, right? So I take time to envision that energy moving through my body. And you can do this in a lot of different ways, but one of my favorite ways is to get into the shower and scrub my head. And while I'm scrubbing my head and I'm just really washing everything, I imagine moving all of that mental energy and all of those mental emotions that are stuck in our head, and I just scrub it and I just release them as I am scrubbing my hair. And then I go to my face and I focus on scrubbing everything from my face, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. And I go all the way down through my body, head to toe, and allow all of those emotions and pent up energies to release down through my body and through that drain, just as the water and the dirt and the scum also do physically. Sometimes it's as simple as just envisioning a bright white light, some sunshine, some warmth coming down into the top of your head and going and filling up your entire being with beautiful sunshine. And that's another fantastic way. Whatever it is that you want to envision, whatever is the best way for you personally to envision moving energy through your body is the right way for you. Now, those are just a few suggestions of things that you could do. But when you're thinking about it, essentially, we're just trying to move things out, just like pooping and peeing and drinking lots of water so our kidneys are flushed, and sweating, whatever the energetic equivalent is to those physical actions. Those are things that you can do in order to move that stuff out. Now, the last part of this is filling our body or filling ourselves with nutrients, supportive nutrients. Now, what are some of the ways that we can fill our body to help us maintain and to help us fill in some of the stuff that we have taken out? One of the first ways that I thought of was creativity. Now, creativity can be a creative outlet. It can be a way to get rid of things, but it could also be a way to fill ourselves back in. Exercising, it's kind of like tapping into your being and allowing that being to come forth and to fill up the space where all that previous conditioning, maybe from whatever it is that we're going through. We're clearing out that conditioning, what other people have said about us or think about us or have taught us about ourselves. And we're now going to fill ourselves up with that true understanding of who we are by tuning into our creativity in whatever way that might be. Rest is the next one that I would suggest, and I mean real rest. It doesn't just mean I'm sitting on the couch for 15 minutes a day. It means that I am setting aside significant time to be able to rest. And this physical rest helps us to mentally rest as well. Our body needs time to be able to recover from everything that it's been through. And we can have stress that keeps us down. We can have anxiety that winds us up, and we need to be able to release those, but then let our body recover from those. Some ways that you can rest is actual physical resting. It could also look like resting from your phone, from social media. It could look like resting from a workout. So rather than working out every single day, maybe you take a true rest day. So resting our mind and resting our body. And one other suggestion that I have is taking time to nurture yourself. So like my friend is doing and has been doing, by finding things that light her up and spending time doing those things, and finding her family support, letting them pour love into you. But also, how else can you nurture yourself? And that might look like a lengthy bedtime routine of like taking your Epsom salt bath and washing your face really well while you're in the bath, and getting out and putting on your favorite lotion or putting on a face mask or a hair mask and doing your nails if that's what you like to do. It's just showing yourself and your body love. So to wrap this episode up, let's just review really quick. We have our puller, which is therapy, but then we also need our purger and we need our filler. Our purging and our filling are going to be just as important as the pulling. And I think that as we support our body in purging and as we fill our body with wonderful things, that then we can be able to hopefully sustain a little bit of that pulling that we experience through therapy. Now, if you need a break from therapy, by all means do it. That can be the rest. Maybe it's a rest a couple weeks off, or maybe it's a couple months off. And there should definitely be no shame in taking that time if needed. But try to support yourself as you're going through therapy with these other methods, and hopefully it can support you to be able to be healthier, stronger, both mentally and physically through your healing process with your therapist. That's it for me today. Hopefully you enjoyed this podcast episode. If you did enjoy this podcast episode, then be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's incredibly helpful for me, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration. Your support makes a world of difference. Until next time, keep rewriting and reigniting your story.